it's hard to try and establish yourself as a critic in the movie film review platform when your first two movies you're reviewing are nearly flawless in your eyes. It's not really selling me as a critic when all I have to do is talk well about the movie. But I guess at the end of the day, I shouldn't really complain given we've been on a great stretch of movies this year. And I mean, Christopher Nolan has done it again. Welcome back to the film review channel, the Kung Fu Kilby film review channel, whatever I'm calling this channel. I'm Ryan, and today we're going to be going through the first of the Barbenheimer movies. The first to me was Oppenheimer. This is obviously Christopher Nolan's new movie. I'm sure you guys know what it is if you're clicking on it. It's about Robert J. Oppenheimer, the atomic bomb, and more than the atomic bomb, more about his life as a whole. When I heard that Nolan's next movie was going to be on Oppenheimer and it was just going to be a biopic, initially I was really like, okay, that sounds like a good idea. And then I kind of thought about it a little more, especially coming off his last movie, Tenet, which to me was a little bit of a step back compared to his typical movies that I've seen from him. It kind of just, as time went on, I got a little bit more and more concerned given that this is a biopic and I don't see Nolan doing a lot of action in this movie. And I was concerned with how he'd be able to handle that. But long story short, my concerns for this movie were very wrong. And if we're going to get off with the good things on this movie, the first thing I absolutely have to mention is Cillian Murphy as Robert J. Oppenheimer. Now, I'm just going to call it right now. Cillian Murphy is going to win Best Actor at the Oscars this coming year. What he is able to do in this performance is absolutely stunning. He completely transforms into Robert Oppenheimer to a point where during the movie, I had to actively remind myself that this is not actually Oppenheimer and this is Cillian Murphy. He does that well of a job. The accent to his face, like he looks like him. And I think he sells himself as Oppenheimer so well. And this is coming from a guy that doesn't know anything about Oppenheimer other than like 2 viral videos that I saw on TikTok or YouTube shorts about Oppenheimer leading into this movie.
Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds.
But from those clips, like he just becomes this man. And it is incredible. And the thing is, this movie does not work if he does not pull out a great performance. The way this movie is structured, it would not work at all if he did not put in an epic performance. This is one of the best performances I've seen in a movie. By the end of this movie, you can't even recognize the man that he plays at the start, which is just a younger Oppenheimer. He's completely transformed and changed by what happens in the events of this movie, and he plays that perfectly. You see in his eyes all the pain that he has to go through throughout this movie, and progressively he just changes to the point where you don't even realize like how different he was. Like I came out of the movie and I was thinking about the beginning of it and I was like, wow, he was very different. And it's played with such a subtlety, the change, and it's so progressive, and because it's such a long movie, they have time to play it out. It's a type of progression that I've only ever seen in Breaking Bad, and that's not even a fair statement because Breaking Bad is a 5-season show, and that's a progressive change throughout all 5 seasons. And now in this, it is one movie. It's not like he was some like saint before he joined the Manhattan Project and he just becomes an awful human. It is just, you see how he's slowly broken down. It's so like progressive and logical that you don't even think about it while it's happening. But I could literally talk about Cillian Murphy's performance forever. And while we were talking about the cast, this whole cast kills it. There's no bad performance. I had to give special shout out to Robert Downey Jr. I think to me, as someone who knows him as Iron Man primarily, that was the first time I saw him was in Iron Man. And obviously I love the MCU to death, so that's always how I'm going to see him. He does a great job of vanishing from Tony Stark and Robert Downey Jr. into Lewis Strauss. And it is actually very, very impressive. People forget that he's actually a legitimate actor and he's not just a big movie star. This guy can act his butt off. And that's what Nolan does. He really, he trusted in his actors in this movie. If the actors didn't show up in this movie, it would not have worked. And as well as this is a Nolan movie, you have to talk about the Nolanisms of the movie. You get the insane practicality, which he was never going to get rid of that. All of that, where every shot in this movie, he says there's no CG in this movie, which given you're making an atomic bomb and doing that sequence, it'd be very easy to just give in and do that, but he does not do that. As well as he's messing with the timelines. I think any other director doing this movie just would have had it go in order of everything happening in one timeline, keeping it smooth, given how much happens, but Nolan doesn't do that. He does his typical timeline, jumping around 2 different timelines primarily throughout the movie. And at the start of the movie, I was a little bit concerned that like it would get lost and be pointless. It really, to me, came off really well and about as perfect as you could do it. And the way they kind of bounce off of them to keep it dynamic, I think that really adds a lot to this movie, and it's very much a Nolan thing to do. And I said this about Mission Impossible, but I have to say it even more about this movie. It is a movie you need to see in the theaters, and I mean that. You need to see it in the theaters. I literally just randomly throughout this movie kind of got a little emotional, and I was like, wow, like I love movies. This is an experience I just can't take for granted because so few directors do this nowadays. And I know I'm just kissing up this movie so bad, but I also have to talk about the tone of this movie, and the tone is actually very somber. They don't really play up the atomic bomb as something that's triumphant. You come into a movie about an atomic bomb, and I'd say the average person would want to see it go off and want it to be like, that'd be like the best part of the movie. But no, when you get to that sequence in this movie and they're getting done to building it, I got anxious. I got legitimately anxious about it. And this is just literally based off of real life, and I think that added to it a lot. I was telling my friends about this after we came out the theater. The Trinity sequence in this movie, Nolan does his thing with time again where it's very on the clock, and I'll just say there's a countdown in this movie, and I was so tense. And like I was literally having to tell myself, like, this is a movie. This is based off of real life. We know what happens. We know we know how it's gonna play out. But I was still anxious because of how well the tension is set and how well the story builds to this point where you're going to this bomb testing. And I just can't give Nolan enough credit for giving me that tension, especially in a movie where I know exactly what's going to happen. And the last thing I need to say about glaring positives about this movie is that I thought the ending was very well done. Honestly, I got to the point in this movie where it sets up to where I'm like, all right, this is probably going to be an ending that I'm not going to love. Just the pacing and like just the tone of the story and how it's been going. This might not be one of those endings that I'm completely satisfied with, but it is an ending that makes sense. But no, Nolan does a really good job of giving me an ending that I wanted. It's well fitting of the story that it's been told, but at the same time, it is still satisfying. And I was like, oh, that's a great way to kind of send the people home happy despite how somber this movie is. But like overall, I don't really have much to say negative about this movie. It is a mastercraft from Nolan. Is this his best movie? It may objectively be his best movie, but I think that being said, I don't think it's gonna be a lot of people's favorite Nolan movie. And I'm talking general audience. I don't think a lot of people are gonna say this is better than Inception or The Dark Knight, but I think the cinemaphiles and people who just absolutely love filmmaking, I think a lot of people will say this is maybe his best work yet. Like I came out of this movie and I didn't really feel the need to go see it again. And I felt like this is a movie I don't really need to watch again because that is just the type of movie it is. It's not a crowd pleaser. It's not just trying to put a smile on your face. It's just being a real film and breaking down. And it's just a mastercraft from everyone involved. Is it my favorite movie this year? No, I rather have like the crowd pleasers. Is it the best movie I've seen this year? It definitely is. Let me just say the few semi-negative things I have. They're more like pet peeves. I don't really feel like there's a negative thing I can really give this movie. I'll say the main one is I think the cast, while being awesome and everyone does really well in their role, I feel like certain characters probably weren't developed as much. I don't really want to give anything away. There are a couple characters that kind of show up and they feel important. And you would think in a biopic about Oppenheimer, they would get more screen time than they did. It's not really holding the movie back. It's just kind of, I wish we had a little bit more detail because there's really nothing in this movie that I feel like they should have taken out. I think everything in this movie needed to be in the movie to tell the story they were trying to tell. And also, I think this movie may not be for everyone. And I don't say that a negative way towards the movie. I just don't think this movie will appeal to a lot of people. It's hard to say this because I guess this is kind of just like an assuming way, but I feel like a lot of people who go to a Christopher Nolan movie are expecting something different than what this movie delivers. I think some people will probably call this movie boring because they're not necessarily there for just a character study and just the biopic aspect. They may just not know what they're walking into. But in summary, this is one of those movies that I'm just glad I got to see in a theater. Like I said in the Mission Impossible review, it's a movie you need to see in the theater to get the full experience. This is the second Nolan movie I've gotten to see in theaters. My first was Tenet, which was still an awesome experience despite the fact I couldn't hear anything. And I think overall, on a rating scale, I'm going to give this movie a Florence Pugh out of 10.
What? This is crazy.
This was a lovely movie. I loved it. Certain people may not get it. Certain people may not understand it or want to sit through 3 hours of a very kind of slow-paced and methodical movie. And it may not be my favorite movie of all time, but I think if people ask me what are the best movies you've seen, this movie will definitely pop up. Just phenomenally crafted. Everything from the cast, the score, the cinematography, it is all expertly done, and I just can't recommend this movie enough. But yeah, that's my Oppenheimer review. Thank you guys for watching. Leave your opinions down below. Did you love this movie? Did you hate this movie? Tell me why down in the comments. And make sure to leave a like, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. This is a new channel. I'm trying to grow it. I'm trying to figure out ways to make myself different from other channels. So hopefully, as we go, the production and everything will get more epic, like a Christopher Nolan movie as we build this channel. But that is all for me today, guys. I hope you guys all have a wonderful day, and peace out.